Coming into the 2023 season, there is one deer we are after. It was a big aggressive buck, and we called him Primetime. Primetime really had everything he needed to just stay right here on this section. About 4 years ago, my family purchased the Whitetails From Scratch property. Both my brother and my father have shot nice deer off this property. Back in 2021, my brother shot Skyscraper and my dad shot Little Splitter. So my goal over the past couple years has really been able to put my mark on the land too. I wanted to get my buck off the property. You know, the last time I've actually shot a buck with my bow was, I think about 11 years ago. So my role here as part of the family in the Deer Society is I run a lot of the operations in the day-to-day of the manufacturing and the product side of the business. So all the way through the summer, leading into the fall, it's just my busy peak time of the year, busy doing things here at the shop and the office. So it really becomes a limiting factor on how much time I can get out into the woods and actually focus on the hunting. And typically, I'm able to frame off one little heavy section of hunting. Usually I try to line it over the prime time hunting season, late October, early November is when I really put my focus into the hunting. So over the past several years, I've had some really good interactions with a lot of good deer. Kind of just been trying to work with my brother and my dad on the management side of things. So passing some deer and just waiting for, that upper age class structure deer to come in and really have my opportunity self-filming, harvesting a deer like that on my own. Part of this 4-year transition of actually owning our own property, there's a lot more that goes into it when it comes to actually being out there, developing the property. It's not just about harvesting a big mature buck. There's all sorts of aspects that come into play, from the logistics and navigation and access throughout the property for various reasons. Setting it up for all wildlife and all environmental habitat. You're not just focusing on one specific species, you really just want a good piece of property that's healthy and provides life and habitat for all these species. So we're going out there, we're putting in food plots, access to water, bedding areas, we're logging it for healthy timber. It's just a really all-encompassing project. So one of the key elements we like to implement on the properties we hunt is providing food source. And food plots has definitely been a tactic and a thing we've implemented for many years now. And over the past few recent years, we've really dove into studying and testing out different varieties of seeds and options for food plots. And we just finally launched this year our new Illusion food plot systems. And this property for the last few years has really become the main testing ground for the new Illusion food plot systems. So the Illusion food plot system is really more than just a seed for food plot. It's a whole encompassing system. It provides all the soil starter and fertilizer you need to really get that seed to take over. And one of our flagship blends in the Illusion food plot systems is one we call Primetime. It's a blend of 6 different brassicas, and it really just performs well in that prime time of year here in Minnesota in late October and early November. And throughout the past few years of developing this blend, we had to gain a lot of content for the launch, and one deer really became the poster child for this blend, and we named him Primetime. During the 2021 season is when Primetime really came on our radar. He became a nice mainframe 10. We pegged in about a 3.5-year-old deer, and he was pretty much all around our property, and we were having multiple interactions with him throughout the hunting season. We were able to find his sheds then that spring, and really he just kind of transitioned and stayed on the property all the way through in 2022, which was very similar. A lot of interactions when we were out hunting. He wasn't really the main focus, but he was always around. He was making the property his home. Then again, in 2022, that spring, following that season, we found another one of his sheds as well. So we were pretty curious on, what's going to be coming up for the next season, the 2023 hunting season. And just kind of throughout the summer, there was really one deer that we knew of that was more of that little upper age class, and that was Primetime. He was the one deer we knew that was kind of bumping up in that 5.5-year-old plus deer. And he really was the only deer that kind of was on the property throughout, the off season and the summer coming up. And even into the early hunting season, he was just the main deer that we had on the property. So that's when he sort of became our target buck for the season. So on a section of the property we call Cedar Springs, that's where we implemented our first hinge cutting and bedding area strategy. So it's had the most years to really develop, and this is where Primetime kind of came in and took over and made his home. And this bedding draw feeds up into one of our nice little hidden food plots where we call it Hidden Plot. So Hidden Plot is a micro plot that feeds right out of this key bedding area and allows the deer to transition up into some egg just to the north. So this food plot's set up with everything a deer needs and wants. It's got the Primetime food plot system in it. It's got a nice water source right there that we've implemented, and it's full of cover all around, you know, kind of why it's called hidden. And it's got some good access points, and we have a reveal cell cam in there, so it really allows us to stay on the property and monitor what's going on in there. So in 2023, you know, Primetime's really developed. He's become that mature 5.5-year-old deer, and you can really tell by his body. His rack has grown in size, but he's still holding that mainframe 10, and he developed one little kicker that kind of made him distinguishable off of his left G2. So what really set off the chain of events for this hunting season was just such a consistent pattern of Primetime in this area. I'm not sure if it was triggered by the drought, pretty dry year here in southeast Minnesota, and you know, we had a really consistent water source on this food plot, and we were constantly maintaining it and make sure the water was fresh and, you know, topped off so that the deer had some water, because we knew they really needed it because it was just so dry. So Primetime really had everything he needed to just stay right here on this section. So it's mid-September, archery season has opened up in Minnesota, and Primetime is still consistently showing up on this plot during daylight hours. So now I'm getting excited, and I know I gotta start putting in some time, which is a little out of the norm for me. I'm usually so busy this time of year, I'm not even thinking about hunting in these latter weeks of the September month. And this year, I had the privilege to shoot a brand new, not even released yet, Prime RVX. And this bow was shooting awesome, so I was getting really excited when I was out practicing, and I just couldn't wait to get in the woods with it. So we're waiting on some south winds to hunt this food plot. And we were fortunate enough to start getting them coming in, and what it did is it brought in a lot of hot weather during this time of month, a lot hotter than we're used to here in southern Minnesota. So we're talking like high 80s, low 90s. It was good in one aspect where it was really going to drive Primetime to want to use that water source, and that's what we were seeing on the cameras consistently. The bad part on these temps is it's hard on the hunter. You really got to be focused on your scent control and how you're accessing these properties. So I'm really going heavy on the phase lotion and the scent control system. The lotions really let me coat my body with something that's going to help as I perspirate, encapsulate any odor I'm letting off on my way into the woods as I'm hunting the stand. So my first time out, getting a lot of interaction with deer. They're coming up, they're using this water source, and they're working through this Primetime food plot right in front of me. So I kind of have an idea of what the deer are doing in this area and what they tend to do. You know, some does, fawns, and even some smaller bucks were coming in. And just as I was hoping, here comes a buck up the draw, and as I look, it's Primetime. And he comes up this draw from the bedding, and there he is at the water source, about 40 some yards from me. And I'm just assuming he's gonna move up this food plot like every other deer did, and I'd get an opportunity at him. And like all mature bucks, they kind of have a mind of their own, and he decided to work himself up another way off the food plot and head out to a food source. So over the next week or so, I'm hunting a few different days, and you know, we still get him sporadically on the trail cameras in the area, so we know he's still in the area, but he's not as consistently daylighting in the evening on this plot. So we're kind of starting to get a little worried, like, is he still going to be keeping this pattern, or is he starting to transition into new patterns? So it's a couple weeks later, and I'm still getting some, you know, consistent winds to hunt this food plot with. We're getting some south winds. So I go out there, and it's another hunt like pretty much every other one on this food plot has been. You know, a lot of fawns and does early. They kind of come up from the draw, hit the water, and then they feed through the food plot. So this stand seemed pretty consistent. My interaction with the deer was almost like clockwork. I would see some fawns and does come up out of the draw, get a little bit of water, feed through the food plot. There was even a lot of acorns in behind me. They'd hit up the acorns, and then they'd push out to the egg up to the north. So it just started out just like any other day. So there's about an hour left of hunting in the evening, and one of the other bucks in the area comes out, hits up the water, and he just kind of works his way up. So I'm like, okay, the bucks are moving now, this is good, you know, let's be ready and see what happens. And that's when I look up and I'm glassing into the woods. and here comes prime time. He basically meets up with this other buck, we call him Buckthorn, and it was pretty cool because I got some interaction and they started sparring right there by the water. So now in my mind I'm like, okay, here we go, prime time's here, we get plenty of light, this is gonna be a good time to get my opportunity. So prime time pushes, you know, the other buck off the water and he takes his turn and he's getting his little slip in his water. So as this other buck's working in up behind me, I'm thinking, okay, this might be a good sign that prime time's gonna follow in suit with him and he'll come up behind me too and get within close enough range for me to get a shot. So now the tricky part of this situation is behind me isn't set up perfectly for a lot of shot opportunities. Yes, it's really close to where my stand is, so I can get a pretty accurate shot if I can get him in a window, but I know it's gonna take some strategy and maneuvering on my end to pull this off. This is a pretty sketchy situation with this south wind because my wind's blowing right at him, but the deer feel comfortable and they're just feeding. So prime time and this other buck are working their way north and they're heading out to the beans. So I'm pretty much, it's over in my head. I'm like, darn it, you know, it was so close. I had plenty of light and now it's over. I'm like, just trying to figure out how do I get out of here without ruining the hunt in the future. That's kind of right when I notice one of the other bucks starts cutting back down and he works his way back out into the primetime food plot and now he's out and he's back in play. So I'm thinking, okay, what's primetime gonna do? Is he gonna follow suit as well? And just like that, here comes prime time. He's working his way back in. I'm like, okay, now everything's running through my mind. This is my opportunity. So next time I get the chance, I gotta be ready to go. I had everything running through my mind that wasn't focusing on making sure I make 100% the greatest shot. I'm focusing on, am I gonna still get the shot? Is he gonna walk out of the way? Do I have enough light? Is my camera angle on him? And that's when I take the shot. So now I'm left trying to just kind of collect my emotions. I mean, everything happened, the adrenaline's high, I'm excited. You know, I just took a shot, I got it off, but the uncertainty, I just didn't know what happened. So now I'm trying to collect my thoughts and figure out and walk back, what happened? What do I got to do next? And we're gonna get out of here as quietly as possible, and I'm heading back to the truck to regroup with the JJ and my dad. And we assessed the situation, and we knew we probably got him, but we knew he needed time. But once I finally got my hands on him, all the excitement and adrenaline came back. You know, everything just came together at that moment. I got to use the new Prime RVX and harvest him with that. I finally got my first deer off this property, so now I could add my name to the list with the family. This is my first buck in 11 years. This is a 5.5-year-old deer. I mean, I just jumped up age class on the biggest buck I've ever harvested, and it just felt good. And when I think back over the past several years, you know, all the hard work on this property, all the learning experiences, all the time out in the woods, finally getting my buck on this property, it just all came together and it just made it so worth it. The biggest keys to this hunt would definitely, a lot would fall into, you know, the actual habitat management and the setup. I mean, having the food source for the deer, having that water there as well, and just having it set up for the bedding and even the access into this food plot I'm hunting. All that put together really allowed us to build that pattern and bring this deer into the area. Another good key was it was so hot. Having that good scent control and all of that set up, you know, it really made this more successful. And a huge key element that really allowed us to execute on all this, you know, and set up that pattern and, you know how to hunt this deer was using those reveal cell cams. And we were able to put that camera on a strategic position where that deer felt comfortable and we never had to step a foot in there.